Welcome to the Panic Button. I'm Neena.
I'm Jessi.
And today we're going to go over a new leaked video from the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. WPATH. It's an interdisciplinary medical association devoted to transgender health and gender medicine. This video shows the members discussing the challenges of explaining medical concepts to kids and other things.
If it's challenging, why do you do it?
When we start people on testosterone or estrogen, we try to be as clear as we can about the stuff that's going to be permanent and the stuff that's going to go backwards. So if you start on testosterone, your voice is going to change. That's permanent, but you might get more muscly, but then that's not permanent if you were to stop. I think the thing you have to remember about kids is that we're often explaining these sorts of things to people who haven't even had biology in high school yet. And I know I've heard others in this kind of a setting say, well, we think adults are like really slick biologically, but in fact, lots of people have very little medical understanding of stuff like that we just medical professionals and mental health professionals take for granted. So I think we have to be more concrete than we think we need to be. Short of surgical stuff and the permanent physical changes that happen with testosterone or estrogen, you might get some breast development that maybe you would later regret. But I think it's reasonably safe to be on hormone for a while and then stop and go back to your natal hormones, provided you haven't had some sort of a gonadectomy. Then, as Cecile mentioned, that's a different issue if you're hormoneless. So I think that is important for people to know. And I think we also, like just in general, people want this, but they don't want this, but they want this, but they don't want this from a hormone. And I'm like, well, you might not be binary, but hormones are binary. And so, you can't get a deeper voice without probably a bit of a beard. It doesn't work that way. Or you can't get estrogen to feel more feminine without some breast development. That doesn't work very well. And there are different ways of trying to get around some of these things. But in general, when you give a hormone, it's going to do what hormones do. It's going to act on a receptor. The receptors are everywhere, and you're going to get some sort of a physiologic effect. And it's hard to kind of pick and choose the effects that you want. And I know that that's like something that kids wouldn't normally understand because they haven't had biology yet. But I think a lot of adults as well are hoping to be able to get X without getting Y, and that's not always possible.
I think it's wild, like actually barbaric, to do something when you are aware that they don't understand. I think it's barbaric to provide a change, not for natural change, but to force a change onto someone who doesn't understand the change. I'm a gay boy, and I just want to be more feminine, so I look like a woman instead of a gay boy. I don't want boobs, I just want to look like a girl. They don't know anything besides what they're thinking and feeling. It's truly harmful to do that to a child.
They think that they can pick and choose different things about each gender. And he says you might be non-binary, but did he say genetics?
No, hormones. You may be non-binary, but hormones are.
You want a higher pitched voice, but you don't want the boobs.
Right, and what?
It's not gonna happen that way.
Well, I mean, if you're born a woman, that is. But otherwise, yeah.
You know.
And that's what he was getting to. Is that sorry, there are some changes that can be accommodated for. If you're a woman who wants a flat chest and that's the only change you want, they can do that. Mm-hmm. But if you want a deeper voice and no beard, that's not how testosterone works.
Right. Exactly. What's crazy is how did their parents not know that? You would think their parents would do the research before bringing them in. Or at least some sort of research.
All parents are just trying to be supportive now, I guess.
You can be supportive to a detriment.
Yes, you can.
I often see people who have already engaged in some sort of, and this is again with youth, who've already engaged in some sort of medical intervention. And so one of the things I do is I'm sitting with the youth and their parents and I say, oh, well, so tell me more about what you know about that medical intervention. And kind of like what Dan was saying, children and young adolescents, we wouldn't really expect them. It's kind of it's out of their developmental range sometimes to understand the extent to which some of these medical interventions are impacting them. And so I think I try to kind of do whatever I can to help them understand best I can. But what really disturbs me is when the parents can't tell me what they need to know about a medical intervention that apparently they signed off for.
Hold on. So wait. So if she's saying that she knows that this child won't be able to comprehend what I'm explaining, but I'm going to try to explain it to the best of my abilities, even though I know that they're not going to get it. That makes no sense. And the parent not getting it, that should be a red flag to any doctor. if the parent doesn't know and you're bringing the kid in to get hormones and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and the parent hasn't done the research, that's maybe
A red flag.
yeah.
I can see a kid getting diagnosed with cancer and the parent not knowing how to process that, because that's at least understandable. Because it's cancer.
Process, yeah, but
Like,
if,
no,
if
not
the
knowing-
parent knows like
Sorry.
what cancer
Sorry,
it is,
sorry,
that
process-
parent would be
process-
Googling everything.
Process is the wrong word. If the parent doesn't know the treatment yet because it's just newly announced, that's understandable. But any parent who gets told that their child has cancer will do the research, because it's going to be surgeries and intense medicines, and there's no real big difference with that and this. So if you're a parent bringing your kid in and you're just like, doctor, fix him. That's you say it's a girl? It's a boy. It's crazy. You wouldn't believe it. Like,
Fix her, fit him, her.
I don't remember.
Like, we certainly provide information, but then you kind of have to listen to what the youth is doing with that information to kind of not catch them, but to pick up on the ways that they're not really understanding because they'll say they understand, but then they'll say something else that makes you think, oh, they didn't really understand that they are going to have facial hair, right? Because they say something else that makes you think, oh, they didn't get that point, but they'll say they totally get it.
That's the scary part about the fact that the doctors are still working on them, because
They're children.
they don't know. They might say they know. They might think that they actually know.
But they just
when
wanna
they
look like
reiterate
Dylan.
it back, they have no idea. Neither do they really care, because they just want the quick fix that's been
Promoted to them.
on TikTok by people like
Dylan.
Dylan,
Like, people
Mulvaney,
like
and
Dylan, and people like, what's his name? The one we hate.
Jeffrey Marsh.
Jeffrey Marsh.
Yeah, that man is just pure evil.
Between that and all the top surgery videos you can find on there and everything else, I mean, it's no surprise that these young people, adolescents and youth, which when you say youth, it's like younger than a teenager.
Yeah.
How do you explain this? How do you even begin to explain to them that you're going to affect them for the rest of their lives because of a trend right now?
I worked in an intersex or disorders of sex development clinic for a number of years as the psychologist. And I would come in to the session with the parents, and usually these were very young kids, so I wasn't really working with the kids, I was more working with the parents. And I would come in there after the pediatric endocrinologist had been in there and had been in there for an hour and had talked with them. And the pediatric endocrinologist came out and said, yeah, they totally get it, on board. I don't have any concerns about their understanding. I would go in and I would say, okay, so tell me what you learned from, and they'd just be like, we have no idea what they were talking about, because they feel differential. Part of it is that they feel less deferential to the kind of doctor I am than the kind of doctor the medical doctor is. And because they really are seeking the care, they're just going to say they know when they really aren't picking up on what's happening. And so I think the more we can normalize that it is okay to not get this right away, it is okay to have questions, the more we're going to actually do a real informed consent process than what I think has been currently happening. And that I think is, frankly, not what we need to be doing ethically.
Normalize it's okay not to get it right away. Why don't you, instead of normalizing it's okay not to get it right away, say, yeah, you may not understand. You're pretty young. You may want to wait a few years. Why can't you do that? Why? Why not? That's not an inappropriate response. And if you say it gently like that, there should be no, and if it's the meatback is no, then you can, okay, if this is what you want to follow through with, you're the doctors, right? But you have to at least give them that option. You have to at least remind them that they are young and they're going to, this is going to be a big decision.
Well, I was thinking about this. They go in there and all they want is, it's like, for someone who suffers from anxiety, all they want is Xanax, right? Because all their friends get Xanax.
Same
and
idea.
They seem like it really helps them, and they seem like chill. So, okay. Then you go into the doctor and you tell them exactly what they need to hear in order to get the Xanax.
What you think they want to hear, yeah.
Right. And this is kind of the same thing. Transitioning in the puberty blockers and the hormones is touted as a quick fix and it'll make them happier and more comfortable and all this stuff. And so all they want is the treatment, but
To be cool right now.
yeah, and that as well. But the problem is that they can't comprehend
The effects of it.
the side effects of anything.
Not even the side effects, the literal effects. like being on testosterone and growing facial hair.
Yeah, they don't know what that's like.
They don't
'cause
even
they've
know
never-
the basic effects
right
of the drugs they're taking.
Now, if it's a woman who wants to be a man, she thinks in her head that this is what she wants, but she's never actually experienced it to know if this is actually what she wants. Long term, especially, and if you're that young, I mean, you think you're invincible, you know?
You just want to be cool. Yeah, and you don't
Yeah.
care about the side effects because you haven't lived long enough to realize what side effects are.
Yeah.
Or actual effects, even.
Yeah.
Because everyone else has sheltered you from it because you're in school still.
Or the side effects of your own decisions.
Yeah, because you're in school still. So
Yeah.
everyone's sheltered you from it. Even if you're a kid that's getting into a lot of trouble
Mm-hmm.
at adolescence, you are still just a child who is being catered to every single day, fed, housed, everything.
Yeah.
You're dependent on the people around you to make good decisions.
But these people are professionals and they don't, they know that these kids don't comprehend it and they're still treating them, so it's pretty frightening.
And that's what I mean. Well, it sounds like at least this woman seems to be the psychologist. So she comes in to ask them if they understand, but you should follow that up with, if you don't understand, that's okay because you're young. You should wait a few years to make this decision when you can understand it more.
Yeah, or at least there should be a general waiting period.
If they could make that specifically something you need from a psychiatrist or a psychologist, like this person who's actually rationally saying they don't understand, you could make it a requirement for them to say they do understand. They can go with the procedures.
But they'll just say that they do understand them.
That's the problem.
You would have to pretty much test them by asking them questions and
Sending baits.
hoping that they actually do understand and they're not just memorizing the answers.
Have questions is, the more we're going to actually do a real informed consent process than what I think has been currently happening, and that I think is frankly not what we need to be doing ethically.
Whoa, she said a real informed consent process. So
Yeah.
what have they been doing so far?
What she acknowledged. She said.
Bad informed consent?
No, she
not
said-
informed consent? Because they can't be informed. They're being informed, but they're not understanding. So is that actually informed consent?
As a psychologist, she would not allow them to go under these procedures because they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm saying we need psychologists trained in this. Just like when you have to get an illicit substance for, like, having a disorder, you should have to see someone to say, yes, they have this disorder. You shouldn't just be like, I'm trans, I feel trans. I could be like, I'm schizophrenic, I feel schizophrenic. I'm not, but I can tell you that.
But doesn't the head of medicine pretty much tell these psychiatrists that they have to affirm?
I don't care. They shouldn't. They should, if the young person is saying this, and even the psychologist is saying it's immoral, the psychologist should have the sign off on that. She specifically said the medical expert would go in and explain things and be like, they totally get it. Walk away because they're ready to just lob off some more parts. That's all they care about. And then she'd go in and be like, did you really understand? And they'd be like, no.
It's the only mental disorder that's actually affirmed.
Yeah, and these
Scary.
it's not even the mental health experts that are necessarily so ready. They're just scared because they want to help people.
I think they got it off the DSM-5 as like a mental health disorder. There's an ulterior motive for that.
I can't believe that the mental health
Yeah.
professionals. I can't believe that they think this is right. Because listen to the one woman just speaking. She knows it's not right.
But our healthcare system doesn't, if I may jump in here, our healthcare system doesn't encourage this. I mean, if you have a clinic, like a university setting where Diane is, or where Cecile is even, and I'm not sure where you are exactly, Dan, but I know many people providing this care are independent practitioners, and they're referring their clients to surgeons across the country. And they may never have an endocrinologist. They may be able to get their hormones prescribed through their primary care provider, who doesn't really know necessarily everything about trans care. They're basically trying to be supportive. And our healthcare system leaves us in the lurch all the time. I agree that we don't necessarily need to be able to have, if you have a known condition like diabetes, you don't have to understand every nuance about what the insulin is going to do to you in order to...
With cancer. I said the same thing with cancer. I just said this about cancer. As someone who was diabetic before, I can tell you the same thing. But my parents at least knew about it. I knew about it,
Mhm.
and my parents knew about it, and I went for studies, and I did all the 9 yards, and I took my medicine. I did everything. Did I want to? No. The difference here is that these people want it.
Give informed consent. But because there's so much experience with that. But in this field, this is all new. This is all contentious. And that's where we run into problems because everyone's afraid. And I know for a fact, people, even adults, even well-educated, older adults accessing care for the first time, sit down with the person who's going to prescribe their hormones and they look at an informed consent form that says your hormones are going to do this, this, and this. They don't take any of that in because they're so scared that they're not going to get what they need. They just show me where to sign because this is my moment. I got to grab it. And they don't really take in the information. And people also are afraid many times about surgery. And so they can read other people's descriptions about surgery and they'll miss details or they'll miss the most important piece of information for them simply because they're afraid to read it. At the same time, we're fighting against the community's desire to have less gatekeeping, less professional intrusion, less spending time in doctors' offices. And how do we manage that and make sure that everybody's got the right level of education to make...
With what was just said, he
Mhm.
asked how to work to minimize time in doctor's offices and time doing this and time doing that.
Yeah.
Do you think that people with, for his example, diabetes, for what I said earlier, cancer,
Mhm.
with even blood pressure issues or cardiac, do you think that they choose to spend hours in the doctor's office?
No, they don't want to be in the doctor's
So if this is a
office.
genuine
just have to
medical,
be.
if this is a genuine medical condition, you're spending your time there. You might be a little frustrated, but you're doing it because you need to. I did studies that lasted a week long, because I had to. Like,
You think maybe some of them might be hypochondriacs?
I think that a lot of these people are trying to hop on a trend. They
Yeah.
don't want to have to deal with doctors because they know that they don't have the situation that they're complaining about.
Yeah.
And then they're going to go forward and complain about stuff like wait times and having to go through all these hurdles. But guess what? You don't just magically get diagnosed with diabetes. You have to go to the right doctors. You have to pee in a cup, and then you have to go to another doctor and pee in another cup. And then they take your blood, and then they come back, and then they run another test. And then they start you on one medication. Then they start you on another medication. It's nothing but going back to the doctor.
The amount of documentaries I know are going to come out about this period of time that we're in that's all about trans nation, you know,
The
the
zeitgeist
the trans zeitgeist.
that we're in right now, yeah.
Yeah, the amount of criminal cases, people suing, doctors,
Yeah, for malpractice.
documentaries, big stories, cover-ups are going to come out. Like, I'm just waiting for someone to just poof, blow the lid right off everything. And it's going to happen because there's just so much that you know has been and is still buried.
I just feel so bad because, like, these families and these children are going to be destroyed because they're just trying to be supportive and their kid's just mentally not great right now.
And the origin of it, like, where's the origin of this push?
From the people that admire it.
But the people that admire it aren't transsexuals, and they're not gays, lesbians, or bisexuals, because you don't admire a difficulty that someone is going through that's tearing them apart, right?
No, they're like emotional leeches, you know?
The people that are pushing this are infiltrators. They're not real trans people.
No,
they're
they're
the
leeches.
trans trenders, you know,
Yeah.
the ones who say they're transgender but they're non-binary or they're queer. They're the
They're kind of like the girls in college that come out as lesbians.
they're like the undercover brother. They're the undercover virus that is infected
Plague, yeah.
the community and is really good at manipulating other people by emotionally manipulating them and getting them to push this by rearranging and changing the language and definitions of words, because once you can change the language, you can manipulate people much easier.
I was just gonna say, you know, it's always a good theory that you talk about fertility preservation with a 14-year-old, but I know I'm talking to a blank wall. And the same would happen for a cisgender kid, right? They'd be like, ew, kids, babies, gross. Or the usual stock answer is, I'm going to adopt. I'm just going to adopt. And then you ask them, well, what does that involve? Like, how much does it cost? Oh, I thought you just like went to the orphanage and they gave you a baby. No, it's not quite like that. Apparently, last week at the Pediatric Endocrine Society, some of the Dutch researchers gave some data about young adults who had transitioned and reproductive regret, and it's there. I think now that I follow a lot of kids into their mid-20s, I'm always like, oh, the dog isn't doing it for you, right? Yeah, they're like, no, I just found this wonderful partner, and now we're kids and da da da. So I think it doesn't surprise me, but I don't know still what to do for the 14-year-olds. The parents have it on their minds, but the 14-year-olds, it's like talking with diabetic complications with a 14-year-old. They don't care. They're not going to die. They're going to live forever, right? So I think when we're doing informed consent, I know that that's still a big lacuna of that we do it. We try to talk about it until most of the kids are nowhere in any kind of a brain space to really, really, really talk about it in a serious way.
Did he say lacuna?
I have no idea what that word was.
Lacuna.
It's still really sad to hear that there's a lot of people talking about having regrets with their doctor.
Well, it's crazy to think that you're the doctor of a child and you have to ask that child how they're going to feel when they're grown adults about something that they'll only care about when they're older.
Yeah.
I think that's crazy when you step back and look at it. I mean, a child can't foretell their future, and they can't foretell how their adult mind is going to be. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
How they're going to think, their decision making.
They haven't fully decided on anything. They're also children themselves still. They can't decide if they want to have kids when they are a kid. It's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It's not giving them any information. These kids believe that they don't care, but it's not letting them actually figure it out. It's forcing them down a path. You heard the dog's not doing it for you? That hurts. That's gotta fucking hurt.
You're pretty much telling them, if you do this, you can't change your mind.
At all.
Because there are going to be things that are going to affect you for the rest of your life. Now, the activists say that you can change your mind and turn back and stuff, but once the damage is done, you can't go back. Maybe they're informing the parents, I'm not sure. Or maybe the parents are just as clueless, but they're getting this idea from everyone else that this is good, references.
Yes.
They have good references about transitioning children.
They have positive ideas about it.
Because they suppress the truth about it.
I appreciate that much less with a 9, 10, or 11-year-old who's starting puberty suppression. And like Ren said, if they continue on, then and I mean it's like developmentally not in their space to be able to have to think about that, and it shouldn't be, right? And so I think it is a real growing edge in our field to kind of figure out how we can approach that. I'm definitely a little stumped on it.
Because you can't really approach it. You're asking a child to foretell their future self. If you would have asked me when I was 10 how I was going to think when I was older, and what was going to interest me when I was older, I would have told you something completely different.
Didn't you do something in school, in maybe middle school or beginning of high school?
You had to take a test.
Not even take a test. No,
Or
you're supposed to
write what you wanted to be.
Write a letter. What you go by. What you like. What's your favorite TV show? What's your favorite movie? What do you want to be when you grow up? Things like that. Where do you want to live? Where do you want to go to school? They asked you all those questions. And then they gave it back to you when you were a senior or whatever.
Yeah.
Whoever, all the senior stuff they do. And they're like, look at how much you changed.
But if you were to ask those children why they gave those answers, if you would ask the kid, well, why do you want to live in
Malibu,
Michigan,
whatever, yeah. Well, I want to go to Malibu because I like Florida and I go there with my family. It's fun.
Well, I want to go to Michigan because my favorite sports team is from Michigan. You know,
Yeah,
they'll
yeah,
give
yeah.
answers like that.
And then when they're a senior, they'll be like, I want to go to Boston because I want to go to college in Boston.
Mhm.
It's my favorite schools there. I've got
and
all
then
the
as they get
programs.
older, they're like, I want to move to Tennessee or Delaware because there's like no state tax, and because taxes are really high in my state. And, you
Right,
know,
whatever the reason is, you know?
Yeah.
And then they make that decision and they're like, oh my gosh, I've changed so much. It's crazy what happens when you're in school. And then you're supposed to go on. Do they not do that anymore?
No.
If you have a kid, did they do that?
But what the activists do is they instill this fear and this shame that these kids are going to unalive themselves if you don't affirm them. That's doing more harm to that child.
Several trans men in their late 20s, early 30s have done a range of social and medical interventions. They're now clear that in hindsight, if they had come out 10 years later, they may not have taken all the medical transition steps that they did if the option of a non-binary identity had been on the table. They don't like to be seen by others as male, but given the physical changes, don't feel like they have a choice. There are different intensities of how upsetting this is to them, but a common theme is not liking to be perceived as male by others to the extent they are seen as male.
Hold on, I have a question.
Yes.
This sentence, they don't like to be seen by others as male.
It's because
This is a mental disorder, right? Like if you're changing yourself because you don't like how other people see you, that's not right or healthy to change yourself because of how you think others see you or how others do see you. Like, why does that matter? That should be like the first question in therapy.
what they're saying though is that they decided when they were not in a good headspace to identify as a man. And because of the choices they made then, they no longer can be seen by the world as their birth
Right.
gender, and they feel
Okay.
different levels of discomfort because of that.
I have a question.
I'm listening.
Who are you? Are you the person you know you are? Or are you the person that is a reflection of how everyone else sees you?
Okay, but if you were born a woman and then you were coaxed into a decision by your doctor
Yeah.
because you are a lesbian, you said someone would have transitioned you.
Yes.
What if they did?
Okay.
And then 5 years later, after you graduated and everything changed, you realize that you're just a lesbian. How would you feel knowing that everyone in the world is now addressing you as a man because you look like a man because of the 5 years of testosterone? Wouldn't you be uncomfortable also being perceived as male?
Well, there's two things. Number one, I would either lean more into it, which would make me incredibly miserable, but I would also be in a great state of fear because the other option is so scary, which is turning back. Or I would be so miserable with where I am and what I did to myself. I would either blame myself and shuffle off this mortal coil,
Yeah.
or I would harbor a great resentment towards the people that allowed that to happen to me when I was just a child. And I would be very angry as well because I would know as an adult that I wasn't thinking clearly as a child and that the other adults in the room should have known better.
And that's what they're reporting. It's not saying that, oh, I'm upset that because people see me as a man. They're upset that they made the choices that make people see them as a man.
Right, but
Because doctors convinced them it was the right thing.
But aren't there books on like children and their mental development and the mental things that they go through? There is a point in a period of time in your life where you get obsessed with how other people see you and you just want to be accepted. You want to be really popular. I used to be obsessed with being popular when I was younger, and it was so stupid. But at the time, it was what I really wanted. I would obsess about it. I mean, we've done studies on kids, and there's books on this stuff. Why isn't that being related to what they're doing? Like, can you verbalize this for me? Because it's not coming out right.
You're saying that people are obsessed with things they want. And right now, as any kid would, you had wanted to be popular, so why wouldn't they want to be popular? These women or trans men are reporting about 5 to 10 years after they get the procedures that they are unhappy because they don't want to be men.
Yeah, because they grew out of it.
Yeah, because they realized it was just a trend that they wanted to, or they had some issues with the way they looked, and they thought, men look better, I would be a man. Or they felt at a disadvantage. They were like, I'm going to be a man. And
Yeah.
it's sad because these women especially 5 and 10 years in, you're screwed.
You're kind of set in stone.
You've
It's
already
kinda difficult to
you've
go
already
back.
had the processes. Yeah, even if you didn't have the
Ooh.
surgeries,
That's when you would need help the most.
you need it at the beginning the most, because that's when it's
Well, yeah, of course, But if you've already gone down that road,
that's
if you came to that crisis, you would. Oh my God, you would need You need to see a good therapist, not an affirmative therapist, but like someone who will guide you down the road to mentally being well again.
absolutely.
One of my adjustments with my transition was losing automatically being perceived as safe by females who I was meeting for the first time. And it was a very strange experience to be walking in a parking lot, following a woman out in the parking lot from the grocery store, and to realize, oh, she's looking over her shoulder to like see, am I following her? Am I a threat? Or to be in an elevator and have, somebody kind of scoot just about as far away as they can. And it was a loss, candidly, not to be perceived or assumed to be safe anymore. So I can easily see that some of these things would be really distressing social impacts.
Survival instinct. That's why men don't belong in our bathrooms, and they certainly don't belong in our locker rooms of sports, prisons.
I remember I was at the mall in the parking lot, and it was like maybe 9 o'clock at night, so it was dark, and I heard a man go, "Hey!" And I rushed to my car, and they were like, "Don't be rude." And I like got in my car, turned and saw who it was, and I saw it was someone I knew. He's in the army. I was like,
Yeah.
"You're a big dude. You can't do that to a woman.
No.
You gotta like at least say my name or something. Like let me
make
know.
Sure that
Let me know that you know who I am before you just start.
Yeah, because that's
start.
startling for a woman. See, that's what men don't understand. That's why when men transition, they don't freaking get it. They're like, "What's wrong with me being in the bathroom?" You don't get it because you were born a woman, man.
Yeah.
You were born a woman. You don't get it.
In a bad area in a parking lot late at night, it just wasn't gonna happen.
Oh my God! Like at the worst. Wow.
Worst place, worst time, and luckily I knew the guy, but it was just so frightening.
Oh my God! Your heart would beating a mile a minute.
Right?
Beating a mile a minute.
I was jumping in my
See,
car.
Men don't understand that fear.
No.
And they think it's irrational, but they're born in a male body. They don't get what it's like to be born in a female body, knowing that 50% of the population could kick your
add to that. A lot of us are youth or focused or heavy in our practices, or young adults and minors. But one of my mentees, who I think is on this meeting today, and some other folks have talked to me about, and I've even had clients as well who were adults who were assigned male at birth and found the loss of privilege and safety that they experienced in the world was really disturbing. And particularly some of the older folks were actually detransitioning, retransitioning for reasons of fitting in, not just either around job stuff, but sometimes to be able to go into assisted care facilities with less hassle and a greater sense of safety. So I think there are
the greater sense of safety, but at the cost of other women around you. That's unfair.
It's just bizarre.
That's bizarre, but that's also unfair. How dare you, sir? How dare you be like, well, today I want male privilege, and then tomorrow I want female privilege. Like, you're walking around the world as if you don't affect anyone else, and you do.
The world has become very me.
Me. Yeah. Seek mental health help immediately.
Case 3 in S. 14 years, 11 months assigned male at birth who identified as female preferred by previous mental health provider for gender dysphoria in the past year. No significant medical history. Gender history at initial presentation. Patient reported that year prior to presentation, a friend came out as bisexual, and patient reports it clicked. Hey, that's what I'm feeling. Did not initially share this with anyone, but then 6 months later told mom about being bisexual. Felt this confused mom. Around the same time, patient also reported looking pretty cute and pretty, wearing female clothing. Reports always having felt this way, but never acted on the impulse to express self using feminine clothing. Patient reports that 1 month after school started, came to the conclusion they were trans. Patient disclosed to an online friend first, then told girlfriend, who encouraged patient to tell mother. When patient told mom about identifying as transgender, reports that mom's reaction was unsurprised. Patient had been trying out different names and eventually chose the name Nora. Patient reported feeling dysphoric and that sadness goes hand in hand with dysphoria. Patient reported interest in starting gender-affirming hormones, but felt the gender-affirming surgery was scary. Felt that mother was supportive of starting hormones, but father was not, and this could be a barrier. Extensive mental health history, starting at age 4, including aggression, ADHD, oppositionality, depression, anxiety, and challenges with behavior. Multiple emergency department visits with behavioral concerns but no hospitalizations. At 15 years, 10 months, the family is open to the patient starting spironolactone, but not ready to provide consent for estrogen. The patient's excited to start medication. Patient continued to follow the mental health provider 2 or 3 months intervals. At 6-month follow-up after starting spironolactone, patient reported that it felt more male and was feeling comfortable with he him pronouns. Reported that I feel like a boy who wants to wear nail polish. Patient wanted to stop spironolactone and not interested in pursuing estrogen at this time. Plan for patient to continue to follow the mental health provider. Has follow-up appointment in 2 weeks. Anybody want to jump in here?
Did you see the other issues that that person has?
So many. Yeah.
Oh my God. So you're going to treat the gender dysphoria, but you're not going to treat anything else? You're not going to see any
Right.
of that as a warning sign, and maybe the gender dysphoria is actually a reaction to all of these things?
Right. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. Feeling like a male. How old is this person?
They're
14
15-ish.
Almost 15. This almost 15-year-old says they feel like a male. Has anyone ever asked them, what does that mean? Well, I feel more masculine. Well, what does masculine mean? Well, I feel like I want to wear pants instead of dresses. You don't see that as a mental health concern? You don't see that as like maybe we shouldn't transition this person because, you know what I mean? I'm just so baffled.
I can't believe this is the world we live in. And no, they're not going to ask any questions because why would they?
But you have to ask, because how do you know? Oh, you don't know, right? You just accept them for what
Their
what
feelings
they
are
say.
valid,
You know,
right?
The problem is there's no definition for what transsexual really is, because they say transgender and then they get the surgery, but that would make them transsexual, right? Especially if they were getting the hormones and stuff.
It's an umbrella now, remember?
It's an umbrella term. The trans umbrella.
Remember?
We need guidelines and we need barriers in place for things like this, because when we don't, the boat gets rocked and then everyone drowns.
Rock the boat, rock the boat, baby, rock the boat.
There's no safety net.
To catch, yeah.
There's no bumpers.
The
we're
bipolarness.
just flying without a net, without a parachute.
The bipolarness is kind of wild. It's unfortunate, but just that fast, in a matter of less than it was like maybe a year or two, this person went from male, because that's what they are, to female, to really pumped about being female, to, nah, I'm a man.
So you get female rights one day and then you don't get female rights, but you get the privilege of being a man and not having to.
How long was this little boy using the women's room at school?
I feel like this is abusing women in a whole different kind of way. Because we're not consenting to any of this stuff, but they can just flip-flop. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about real transsexuals. I'm talking about the invaders. And there's a lot of them.
The problem really also lies in the fact that this young man, this young male,
is obviously mentally ill.
had aggressive behaviors listed.
That's worrisome.
As well as a bunch of other, like, violent tendencies being listed.
When you're going to let him transition so he can be around women?
And also behavioral issues. It's you should address other issues first before allowing transition. It's just, it doesn't make sense to say, oh, you're expressing yourself all these crazy ways. Yeah, you just want to be a girl. No, you don't. Oh, then Well,
maybe
we
we
should
should-
have you go back to someone to talk about your brain.
Maybe before we allow these men to transition and come into female spaces, we should make sure that they're not a threat to women first. They're not aggressive or have some sort of other mental illness that may be a danger to women. Like and subscribe, join our memberships, do all that fun stuff, and ring our bell.